Welcome to the chat. This is Jack Spillane, and tonight we have a serious subject, the immigration raids that have been going on in New Bedford since January. We're going to do this chat in two parts. First, tonight, my guests are Ondine Galvez Sniffin, a longtime immigration attorney active in Massachusetts and on the South Coast. Corinn Williams, the longtime executive director of the Center for Economic Development. Do I have that right? I should know that by now. Community Economic Development Center. And Alicia Lopez from Mujeres, Victoriosas. Alicia has been delayed but will be joining us shortly. Welcome, Corinn and Ondine.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Jack.
So, since January, New Bedford has been undergoing what I call abductions of people, whether in their homes, near their workplace, at places of business, right off the street, in a way that I'm not familiar with. We've always had deportations of one sort or another, but these seem to be people out of the blue who are being picked up. Ondine, what are you seeing in your cases that are coming to you?
Thank you again for hosting this. What I'm seeing is working families that are being torn apart, basically. The administration said that they were going to go after criminals, and what is happening here in New Bedford is they have targeted families, primary breadwinners, some children, arguably. They've used wellness checks as an excuse to pick up people as well. So yeah, they're not going after the criminals. They're going after people like you and me who are just trying to make a living and provide for their families.
We had this press conference in Boston with the U.S. Attorney's Office last week, where they talked about people, fully half of the victims being guilty of serious crimes, things like murder, rape, robbery. That is not at all what we've seen in New Bedford. It almost seems like a ruse just to have an excuse to have someone whose only crime is coming across the border without papers or some crime that has been dismissed relative to something like a domestic or a an operating under the influence. Is that what you're seeing, Corinn?
Yeah, we are seeing that. And I think it's accurate to call it abductions because I know our organization, a lot of the community-based organizations, we're doing a lot of work on Know Your Rights workshops, preparing families to let people know what their rights are in the case of an immigration raid. And it just seems like there's violations all over the place. Even, we were telling people that you don't need to you need to see a judicial warrant in order to be taken by ICE, but there's been violations all over the map on any of these abductions that have been occurring in the city. So it has been not following any kind of protocol and violating people's rights.
So this is not the way it normally has been in the past. You've given out these instructions. I have a right to talk to my lawyer and the steps that people can go through, and it just doesn't seem to do any good in some of these cases. It seems even different than we used to have way back 18 years ago in the Bianco raid. Is it different in every way, Ondine? I see Alicia Lopez is joining us. Alicia, are you here? Very
Yes,
good.
yes.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the chat, Alicia. We're glad that you could make it and get the technical problems worked out. We've been talking about how the people who are being arrested in recent months in New Bedford is different than, people who were dealing with deportation issues in the past. Is that what you've seen, Alicia?
Yes, we have seen um, that the violence that they've been using, the way they've been detaining our community members, and the way they're even talking about our community as everyone is being an immigrant. yeah, I'm sorry, an immigrant and a criminal when we know we're not, we're not criminals. And so they're using languages like that to confuse other community members and to divide us.
You yourself have been here since 1988, have raised 5 children. Tell us about your life in New Bedford.
I I've been in New Bedford for the past 20 years. I came from Guatemala, went to Los Angeles, from Los Angeles to Providence, and then from Providence to New Bedford. And I've been here, and I've seen how much it have changed from 20 years ago, and how much population has been changed. Now that there's more Guatemalans and Mexicans and Salvadorians. Back then was afraid. I was afraid because I didn't see a lot of people like me. It wasn't as many people as like me, and it was and Spanish was not a word. We didn't see a lot of people that speak Spanish. We only had 2 stores back then that would sell things for Hispanic, and so we have and after the years we have seen an increase of people coming in and having their stores and just being themselves included in the community. And now we see this as we have grown. We see what's going on with our community and how much we were progressing, and now we're going backwards again.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it seems like. There was all this progress, the driver's license is, and now we're going backwards. Uh, Corinne, what are the estimates about how many in New Bedford, the people who have been picked up are largely Central Americans. How many Central Americans? What are the estimates in New Bedford? Guatemalans, Salvadorans, Hondurans.
Well, I heard an estimate around 24% of the population is Latino now, according to like the census of the school population. So it's a growing community, and the reality is that I think a lot of times this campaign has been to, like Alicia said, is to divide communities. The communities that we serve some have work permits, some are citizens, some have green cards. So there's a whole host and continuum of immigration statuses that one person might have. And clearly there's being profiling, clearly there's being certain immigrant groups that are targeted. And we found that the case also in New Bedford, that the great majority of the folks who are being picked up are folks who are from Central America and Latino.
So when we say the Latino population in New Bedford, there are Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, all kinds of people from Brazil, different populations. But it does seem that the people who have been targeted are the Central Americans. Would you think that that's correct, Ondine?
Yes, absolutely. It's more like Corinn says, that's the greater that's the largest group of immigrants here in New Bedford are Central Americans, larger than Haitians or any other nationality. So it makes sense that that they're the ones that are in numbers, and that's essentially what this administration is looking for. They're looking for numbers. And so that's who they're going to go after. And just to get back to your previous question about the Michael Bianco raid from years ago, I think it's very different from then. The Michael Bianco raid was a one-shot, enforcement action where they had been investigating for months. They had people at the factory that were undercover, and they had a good idea that a majority of the workers there were undocumented. They had a good idea that there were labor violations going on. So although I disagree with what happened, I can see where they had some justification for that enforcement action. And that's not the case now. They are making mistakes of people that they are picking up. They are not targeting specifically on certain individuals. They're targeting an entire community.
Yeah. Would I be you think there is evidence that this is almost a ruse when they say that we're looking for to get the hardened criminals, because almost nobody would disagree with that. And while they say they're looking for the hardened criminals, they're actually looking for anybody who's here without documentation. Ondine?
Absolutely. Yes. And mind you, being here without documentation, that in and of itself is not a criminal violation. It's a civil infraction. So to take this hard line against people who have done nothing more than what would be the equivalent of jaywalking, to take such a hard line against them is really, it's not justified at all.
Yeah. And I think, Corinne, you pointed out that many people who are here are in various stages of becoming legal and becoming documented. They have cases that they're waiting for, seeking asylum and various things. So just because you may have come in the original situation does not mean that you're still there in that situation.
Yeah, as it turns out, I was just speaking with a woman who was in the Bianco raid this afternoon. I happened to talk to her, and she is, she has work authorization and has completed her case and is raising her family and living her life. But unfortunately, her sister-in-law was ordered deported for an immigration infraction that she had. So her family is being torn apart. Her sister-in-law had no criminal record, but unfortunately is in the process of deportation. So there's all these stories that sometimes we don't hear about. We're hearing about different people being picked up on the street, but there's just a kind of a wave going through the community of heartbreak, basically, of these families being torn apart. And she told me her kids were crying because her aunt was going back to her home country. So it's just devastating, and it really is rippling through the community by tearing apart these families.
It almost it seems like they're being terrorized. Alicia, do you feel people are people feeling, terrorized or just put in fear?
Yeah, it is definitely terrorizing the community. We are in fear, and when I say we are in fear, I'm documented now, but I don't feel I don't feel safe myself, and I can't even think about everyone else what is feeling. And sometimes we talk to the community, and the women don't want to talk. They're afraid of they're being surveilled by the phone or by anything. They don't want to go out. They don't want to do anything. We have children that don't want to go to school because they're afraid of not seeing their parents again. um, and and the fathers too, the head of the household, they're being taken away from the families, and that's 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 bringing trauma into our community. And the community is not criminals. They don't deserve this, because they contribute to the city, they contribute to the country, and they do not deserve to be treated this way. They do not deserve to be treated like if they're criminals, and they deserve to be criminalized like the way they're being criminalized.
It's interesting that we have a story coming out soon in the light about a woman who has been held, but the overwhelming majority are men, and I think it was Corinn or someone pointed out earlier that they're breadwinners. Um, do you think that there is a strategy where if we take the breadwinner, people have young children, that they don't have the resources, and then they end up feeling pressure to self-deport, Ondine?
Absolutely. I have a few clients like that. So they're also picking them up, as Corinne was discussing earlier, at ICE check-ins, where they've picked up the husband, and now the wife is asking me, well, how do I get back home? It just makes sense that that would be the effect of this. Um, so yeah.
Just unbelievable. I started the column I wrote a week ago, trying to paint a portrait of the near North End, the Cushnet Avenue, and the restaurants and the shops that are predominantly Central American now, Guatemalan, Honduran, Salvadoran, and Riverside Park, where every afternoon you see the kids and the young adults playing soccer, the young families at the Tots playground. It just seems to me that that section of the city, and also parts of the South End too, are now primarily Latino, the way that they were Portuguese a generation ago, and the way that they were French, Canadian, and Irish before that. Uh, I just everyone who lives in New Bedford who frequents these neighborhoods must see that the Latinos are here and primarily everyday people, working people. Would that be accurate, Corinne?
I got to tell you, just from working with a lot of these mom and pop businesses and restaurants over many, many years, it's these folks who have invested in this neighborhood where other investment hasn't come in. They've given their blood, sweat, and tears to open up a restaurant or to open up a store and really making a difference on the commercial corridor and in on Acushnet Avenue, and creating the opportunities for neighbors. I know a lot of folks who have bought their first homes in the neighborhood too. So they're really putting down roots, investing their funds and their families' funds, just like previous generations have always done. So it's the same history repeating itself, but unfortunately with a dash of terror in in the present times to tear apart a neighborhood and all the progress that's been made in a community like the North End.
Yes, and your organization, the Community Economic Development Center, if I have it right, that's talk about what you do. You help people with their taxes, you help people start small businesses, and those businesses are up and down the avenue now.
Yeah, we've worked with many of those businesses, and over time, a business owner might be in one immigration status, but now they've become citizens. Their kids have grown, or their kids are going off to school, and it's really has been really gratifying to see how families have pulled together and really created a new place in their new home. But we've always thought of ourselves as a community who is a welcoming community. And in a lot of ways, there's been many, many people who've pulled together, and I've seen it since the election. There have been lots of folks who have pulled together to see how they can help, what they can do, and to try to continue this legacy and history as a welcoming community. But who we don't welcome into the community are these rogue federal agents that are circulating in the streets in fatigues, no less, and sometimes masks. Sometimes they're not identified with the jackets that they're wearing if they're from ICE or DEA or some other kind of federal agency. And I think one of the things, and somebody had mentioned it to me a while back, is about excessive use of force, just like Alicia had said. The kind of coercion and aggression that we're seeing in these abductions is just not something that any kind of law enforcement should be engaged in, period. We've seen the abuses of power that have occurred across the country. And where is the training? Where is the oversight of these agencies to not be well, breaking windows and yanking people out of cars? What kind of protocols are they following? It doesn't seem like there's any protocols. And Ondine, as you remember, the one silver lining out of the Bianco raid many, many years ago was to establish some of those protocols. If you are going to have a workplace raid and you are going to pick up women and children and worker and men, and how you're supposed to treat people, in these procedures. And this is something that we haven't really, nobody's really talked about. It's just, I think everybody's been in so much shock about how these abductions have happened and how these actions have happened. There hasn't been a questioning about that. And on top of it, people are more reluctant to even call law enforcement, to call the police if they're being victimized by domestic violence or if they're being assaulted on the street. They're not going to pick up the phone and call 911 in this kind of environment. So it puts us all in danger and our whole community safety in danger as well.
Yeah, I just wonder if some of the violence, some of the masks, the lack of identification on uniforms is the point to make it like a police state, and so that you scare people to the point where they're going home to their native lands. Ondine, despite these tactics, are you being successful in getting people out in most of your cases? How is it going for you as they work their way through the court system?
Yeah. So we have been, I have not taken on too many bond cases because it has been overwhelming, just the caseload, and just a solo practitioner. I have a support staff, but the few bond cases that we have taken on, we have been successful. Because for bond, you have to establish that the individual is, or the government has to establish that the person is a danger to the community and they're a flight risk. And like we said earlier, most of these people do not have a criminal record. So they are not a danger to the community. They're part of the community. They enhance the community. And they're not a flight risk because, again, they're part of the community. They've established roots here. So on those facts, general across the board for the clients that I've had, we've gotten bond and we've gotten them released, thank goodness. So yeah, I've been successful on a case-by-case basis, but there's a lot of cases out there. So
Is everybody who needs a lawyer in these circumstances able to get one in New Bedford? I heard today that we're up to 31 cases at least that we've had.
wow. And I can tell you, I don't have those 31. I may have had about a half dozen or so cases that need bond. But yeah.
Corinn, are most people getting lawyers? Are they able to get help?
No, it's been very difficult. A lot of people haven't, they might have started a case or consulted with an attorney, but were unable to afford a private attorney. And so we're very limited in terms of the supply of pro bono or low-cost attorneys that are in this region. I think that's one of the disconnects with the state. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of resources up in the Boston area and a lot of programs, et cetera, but our legal services covers many different counties, going from the Cape out to Plymouth County, I think. So there's several different counties they cover. One small immigration unit, Catholic Charities has a small unit. So we really, really need legal support and help, and really grateful to the private attorneys who have been in the trenches and doing this kind of work in our region for so long, but we really, really need help. And some organizations have been successful in training up non-immigration attorneys to provide some of this support. So we're kind of looking into ways that we can maybe bring some of those additional legal resources into the region, because it's really sorely needed. But unfortunately, I mean, unless you have an attorney already, the kind of the rapid pace of these deportations makes it very difficult for people to get representation at the last minute. But there are some attorneys that are just sort of specializing in bond hearings that we've been successful in kind of connecting them to those legal resources as well.
Okay, I know we have a lot of attorneys that read the New Bedford Light and watch the New Bedford Light. A lot of great attorneys in New Bedford. I've worked with them over the years. We need some pro bono help here. A lot of these people are
Absolutely.
not getting the adequate representation they need. Alicia, I wonder if we can talk a little bit about your background. You have worked in childcare for many, many years. You are on the board of directors of Alma Del Mar, one of the most prestigious charter schools in New Bedford. Talk about your life and why you wanted to come to the city.
Well, I came to the city, to New Bedford, because of work. My mom found work, and she told me that there was work here, and I decided to just follow my mom, 20 years ago.
That's the same
And
immigrant story for generations and generations.
yes, because myself, I came in 1988, and I worked as a young child in New Bedford, from Providence to New Bedford over the summer when we had summers. As undocumented, you don't get any type of help. There's no kind of help. There's no food stamps. There's no cash assistance. There's no medical um, assistance. Maybe they have nowadays. They have like the free care, but honestly, it's not. It's not the best. But back then, it wasn't like that. So we had to work. And so, but I did. I came here because of work. And I love New Bedford. New Bedford is my home. It's a lovely place. And I have worked myself up. It hasn't been easy. I have 5 children, and I was undocumented, and nothing was easy for me. Just like for everyone else, was not easy. And living in poverty, and trying to survive, trying to pay rent, trying to pay the bills, trying to eat, and trying to just have some quality time with your children was not easy.
And and
And that is the same. Mhm.
and even as you
and
did these
and
things, you were
and
active in the community with
excuse me.
Cosecha in the effort to get driver's licenses and Mujeres and Victoriosas. You've been active giving back.
Well, every all that time, as I was living, I was also helping people, translating, bringing them to schools, bringing them, and I was very close to the community. I have always been very close to the community. And that's what gets me so upset. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm standing strong. And that's why I don't go anywhere, and I stay within the community, because I have seen, and I joined Movimiento Cosecha 6 years ago. And my family has been deported, and it's not fair, and it shouldn't be that way. But that's why I have joined Movimiento Cosecha, and now I'm working with Mujeres, and we're still organizing. I'm an organizer, and I will continue with this. I've always worked with children, and one of the reasons why I joined the movement, it was because I used to see the children and how much they were afraid. The first time Trump became president, I remember I was with one of my students, and she was crying because she was afraid of her dad being deported. And um and that really made my heart feel that I needed it to do something. And children need to be defended. They can't defend themselves. As adults, we have to be the ones defending the children. And that's why I joined it, because I didn't want to see that fear in them. I didn't want them. And I did told that little girl, I said, I'm right here, and I will see how can I help. And I've been helping since then. When you live
Oh,
here and you live through this, you just stay.
I just want to make a point that Alicia's story is the story of generations of immigrants. We talk about immigrants coming without documentation as if this is something new, but I'm in my 70s. I'm not. I'll admit it. And I can remember when I was growing up, you had the term WAP, which was a slur for Italians, and it meant someone who was in the country without papers. For many, many years, I talked to people who came from Portugal or Cape Verde or any place else, and they were here overstaying their green cards. They did not have papers. You did not have the furor and the just determination to deport all these people back then that you have now. And I just don't, I think somehow it's been framed as something that is entirely new to this country, and people coming, in various stages of documentation has been around forever. If anybody, Corinn or Ondine, anybody wants to comment on that, you're welcome to.
I think what we're seeing now is it is very different, precisely because the complaint has always been, well, why don't they do it the right way? Why don't they do it the legal way? And what we're seeing is that even for those who are doing it the legal way, that are going to court, that are going for their ICE check-ins, that have work permits, they are being targeted and they are being picked up. So that's, part of this whole new, the way it's being looked at. The way it was promoted during the campaign was, we're going to go after the murderers, the rapists, and people like that, the hardened criminals, the bad hombres. And who they're really going after is, the same people that in generations before this had done it the right way, had done it by going through all the paperwork, had started without papers, but somehow, like Alicia, did it the right way and ended up getting their papers. Well, today, Alicia wouldn't have that privilege.
And I just admire you, Alicia, for putting yourself out there, with your name, because I know it must not be easy with some of the attitudes that are out there. We have a comment that's come in from an Angel Beltran. He wants to know, why are there cases moved away from Massachusetts so quickly? Is that what's going on, Ondine? Are cases being moved away from Massachusetts quickly?
They're being moved out of the New England area for several reasons. There is a network of attorneys here. As a solo practitioner, I haven't been able to do these cases on my own. I've relied on other attorneys with the ACLU. There's a network that focuses on habeas petitions. They move them out because they know that as a bar of attorneys, we are unified. And even though we may be individual private practitioners, in a situation like this, we will come together and we will help each other. And that's what's been happening. That's the only way I've been able to get my clients out. So from ICE's perspective, they want them out of here as quickly as possible, so they don't have access to their attorneys, so that they can't communicate with their family members. In places like Louisiana or Texas, the facilities don't provide easy access to phone calls. So that creates hardship for the family that remains here, as well as hardship for the detainee who doesn't have access to legal counsel. So for ICE, that benefits them because life becomes so difficult for that entire family that they just give up and they leave. The detainee will take an order without arguing for release, and the family will eventually follow.
Unbelievable. I want to touch upon, I've heard some reports that people have been stopped and ICE doesn't really know who they are, and then they ask for papers, or they try to identify if they might be here illegally just by the way they look, or whose company they're keeping. Have you heard reports like that, Corinn, where people are approached and ICE doesn't even have any reason to approach them?
And I think the majority of the cases that we're seeing, there's no judicial warrant. There's no, they're just kind of picking off people. They don't have anybody that they're really targeting, or maybe they have somebody that they're targeting. But if like in the case of Juan Francisco, they were looking for Antonio. He wasn't Antonio, but they picked him up anyway. This other case with this man named Andres, they ran the plates for somebody else, his cousin named Marcos. So it doesn't matter. It kind of doesn't matter, and they're just running roughshod over our due process and our system of laws in all over the country, and including in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I remember the case I read about that, one of the first cases where they went to the Guatemala music store, and which had, the previous owner had been convicted of selling fake IDs, and he should be punished for that. But they went in and they started asking everybody for their papers, and the one person who didn't have their papers, they arrested. That sounds like something of a bygone era. I've never heard of
Right.
anything like that.
Right. And just to correct you, Jack, the current owner of the store is not involved in selling false
Yes,
papers.
it was a
So
former
just
owner.
to clear that up, because I know that
Yeah.
that gets repeated quite often. And the individual who was picked up, fortunately, has been released on bond. So he's back into the community, but it's been an unfortunate situation where he suffered, being detained for a number of weeks because they picked him up based on his ID, and it was a proper ID that he gave them.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of violations going on, and again, it's a lot of the stores are, they're trying to run a business, so people have their customers coming in and out. So providing some level of protection for their customers is very difficult. The officers that came in that day didn't identify themselves. And when I spoke to the store owner, she said, "Well, I thought they were from the city. I thought they were city inspectors. I had no idea that they were from ICE." So there's a lack of identification there.
I think I did say former owner, but if I didn't, I stand corrected.
Well, let's
Alicia,
let's call it what it is, Jack. Sorry, it's racial profiling.
yes,
There's no probable cause. There's no warrant. Even if they applied for a warrant, they wouldn't get a warrant. It's racial profiling. That's their modus operandi for picking people up.
absolutely, absolutely. It is just as I said in the beginning, a ruse, to get at people. Alicia, are we at the point where people are afraid of being in public, afraid of going to their jobs, afraid of going shopping to pick up their kids from school?
Yes. Yes. We're still doing it. Community members are still doing it. They're still going to work. They're still doing a lot of things, but they're doing it under the fear. We have a lot of community that are still doing all that stuff because they don't have a choice. They have to work. They have to bring in the food, and they are obligated to bring their children to school, because if they don't, then they get themselves in trouble because they're not bringing their children to school. So there's many things that our community members are doing it with the fear, and that's what tells me that we have so much courage and we're so powerful because even with the fear, we're still going and we're still getting it. It's not going to stop. Our community is not going to stop. Even though it's with this fear, it's not going to stop because we weren't born that way. We were born with courage, and this is why we cross the borders, because we needed this and someone depends on this. So even though they are afraid, they're limiting themselves. We're going to certain places where they can't go. They are limiting themselves. They're limiting themselves of even visiting their friends or doing certain things that they used to do before, like going to the park or driving to somewhere. They're limiting themselves, but their essential stuff, they're still doing it.
Well, that's inspiring to me that people are not going to be intimidated, that they are going to organize more, that they are going to keep living their lives and not, buckle to this. I just want to say, because I'm feeling a little bit guilty when I said that the person who was selling the fake IDs should be punished. Maybe I'm a little strong in saying that because certainly we all want to obey the law as much as we can, but you're talking about people fleeing from poverty, from violence, and trying to make a living, and that's what they need. So if Corinn or Ondine, you want to give me a little bit of a hard time on that, you're welcome to.
I mean, I understand where that comes from. We are a country of laws still, I think. So I'm pretty sure that individual has paid the price and then some for what happened. But getting back to the fear in the community, I can tell you, like Alicia says, people are still going to do, what they need to do to live their daily lives. I had a client whose child had to go, got an appointment for fingerprints. Now, people are afraid to go to their hearings. People are afraid to go for fingerprint appointments. But the community got together. They brought the child to me in Providence, and I was able to take her to get her fingerprints, to get her picture done. But even I was afraid, and I looked for those masked agents waiting there. And I had a plan in mind of how I would scoop this child into my arms and not let ICE agents take her. Thankfully, that didn't have to happen. But I mean, the ripple effects of the fear, it hits everyone.
That's just astonishing. The United States of America, this kind of fear. I just would never thought that I would live to experience it. I'm getting a lot of questions from people who want to know, well, what is the best way for those on this call to support an attorney like Sniffin and her clients. In other words, people want to know what can we do to help? Corinn, the suggestions about how people can help?
Well, I know there's a mutual aid fund that was established by some of the folks in the faith-based community. I can look for the link and put that in the chat. That will pay for some legal fees. There's also sort of other expenses that families are going through. Just to establish, one of the things that we do a lot of is establishing a phone account for folks to be able to talk to their loved ones while they're in detention, and that costs a lot of money. And like we were saying, if someone who's the main breadwinner in the family is no longer providing that support, then they don't have those expenses. And so there's some basic needs that community members are in need of, and we've been kind of we know that there's the mutual aid fund, and I know Alicia has been spearheading some of that and working with community members who've been giving people rides and providing support. So I will look for that link and make sure I drop it in the chat.
Yeah, and anybody who wants to call the Community Economic Development Center or email Mujeres Victoriosas. Alicia, translate Mujeres Victoriosas, women of power. What would be the best way to translate
Mujeres
that?
Victoriosas.
What
It's
does it mean
Mujeres Victoriosas.
in English?
Victorious women?
Victorious woman. Okay.
Mhm, mhm, yes.
So I'd like to put in a plug for the ACLU. They are a legal organization that has helped me a great deal and has made it possible for me to expand my abilities as a solo practitioner so that I can really take care of my clients. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be able to do it on my own. So the ACLU of Massachusetts in particular has been great, and they're fighting there all the time, above and beyond what I can do.
Yeah, the good old ACLU, they've been on the forefront of this for the entire time President Trump has been dominating the scene the last 10 years. Kathy Doyle wants to know how we can hold ICE responsible. Ondine, are there any lawsuits or class actions that people in New Bedford who are victims can join to try to counteract what ICE is doing?
I think part of the problem right now, and things may change as time goes on, part of is the fear. And so people are afraid to respond to the violations of their constitutional rights. People are afraid that if they decide to sue the government, they may, the government may retaliate against them and do something that will throw a wrench in their individual immigration process. So it's tough to do something like that. What I have told people in the community is videotape them. When you see something happening, videotape them, confront them, post those videos on social media. I can tell you, for me, seeing those videos of people, just ordinary neighbors, saying, "Don't take my neighbor," or "Do you have a warrant?" or "Why are you doing this? Who are you? Why are you masked? Shame on you." That gives me hope, because this is a very tough job. And that's not to say that what people in the community are going through isn't, they're the first line that's suffering from this. But like I said, there are ripple effects. And to see the community, people who are not, financially or personally invested, fighting on behalf of this community, that gives me hope. And I'm sure it gives Alicia, it gives all of us who are there on the front lines, it gives us hope and motivation to keep doing what we're doing, because we know we're not alone.
I'll just point out that Corinn has put up the link in case you can't see it. It's https://givebutter.com XM capital M K L capital ZZ. So if you can see it, otherwise call the CEDC. From Derek Sachs, why are these abductions not being investigated by the Attorney General as kidnappings if they are extrajudicial and violate due process? I don't know how that, I mean, the Justice Department itself has been compromised. I'm not sure what would be the means, Ondine, to investigate extrajudicial.
Well, I believe investigating, so it would have to be an individual who has standing. So someone whose rights have been violated. That's the person that has to bring the action, or has to go to the Attorney General and ask file a complaint of some sort and see if the Attorney General will take that further. Without that individual who's implicated in that violation of their rights, there isn't a case. So until we get individuals who are brave enough to fight the federal government, it's going to keep happening.
At the same time, there's been a number of suits that attorneys general across different states have combined to have combined to have these suits brought against the federal government, and there's a number of examples around that. So there could be some potential in Massachusetts, banding together with some other states to really call attention to this and to the extrajudicial nature of these abductions.
We are beginning to see ICE going to workplaces in California. That's some of the issue in California protests that are going on right now. We know that a lot of immigrants work in the seafood houses, in the construction industry, roofing, drywalling, in childcare, in landscaping. Alicia, are we worried about people deciding to go to workplaces?
Yes. And we're trying to keep an eye on that, so then the community is aware, and we are wary that that's next steps that they're going to do, as they've been going around and taking people from their homes and taking people from even the streets, or while they're under break or anything like that, because this is what they do. They follow people. They follow people, and when they know that no one is watching, they take them. This is what they do, and this is why people even gets even more afraid. And now the only thing that we can do as community members is making sure that the people at the fish houses or anything like that, or the restaurants or the stores, know that there is a community, and to do what Ondine said: videotape, take this is what's gonna make, this is your voice. Someone is trying to take people's voices, someone is trying to silence people, and this is the only way people are gonna raise their voice. And this is why they're covering their faces, because they know that what they're doing, it's illegal, it's a crime. They're the ones who are committing crimes. They're the ones who are doing illegal stuff. They're the ones who is harming community members, and they're trying to do it while people is at work. And there's a lot of work that we're doing, canvassing, with from street to street, trying for people to know their rights, and to know that there is someone that is here to support them.
And,
We are also starting to see more protests in New Bedford. Is that an avenue that you think that could be effective?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I think the more that the movements are pulling together to kind of call attention to the abuses of power of the Trump administration on all different fronts, right? Not just these abductions, which are the most egregious, but there's plenty of things that are going on in going up to the what's going on this weekend, the No Kings rally that's happening in Fairhaven. These movements and rallies are going on all across the country. So the more that there's that interdependent support. But I just wanted to shout out to Alicia and the folks who are organized on the street are making sure that the information that's being posted is credible information, because there's tons of misinformation that's out there. Just today, there was a workplace raid. It was an actual workplace raid, large scale, that was going on in Nebraska, but folks thought it was actually happening in New Bedford. So cross-checking information, verifying information as people are documenting what's going on is incredibly important. And I know a lot of the efforts of the groups that are becoming organized in the city has been really instrumental in making sure that people don't panic and that we do have good information that's verifiable.
What have you found are good places to get accurate information besides the New Bedford Light? That
Well, I mean, a lot of times people are flooded with social media that
Yes.
that have these clips that, sometimes they'll say, oh, there's something going on in at a gas station in Fairhaven, but you look at the picture and the gas station is obviously something from, down south or something. So I think that's a really important piece of it, is to combat from misinformation. And there's lots of places to get credible information, including New Bedford Light and the newspapers that have to do the fact checking on the stories that they're writing.
Yeah. Does the CEDC, the ACLU, are there places, Alicia, that people go to for more accurate information?
Yes, of course, and we're working very closely with each other, so then we all have the same information. So if they go to CDC, they have it, they know it. If they go to CCT, they have it, they know it. We have been organizing ourselves, so then we can provide, the best information as it can to the community. And these are places where people trust, like CDC. This is a place where people trust. They know who's there, they know who works there, and they trust them. And it's best to go with the person that you can trust, and you can talk about whatever issue you have. And that's part of the work. We want to make sure that community members are fine and happy, or trust, or they just trust the person, the place that they are at.
There is also, of course, the Immigrant Assistance Center, which has long been present in the city. There is Centro, Comunitario, the Trabajadores, where Adrian Ventura, who will be our guest next week, has been getting out good information about the workplaces and other issues for years. I want to quote this woman, Patricia Hyde, the acting field office director of the ICE in Boston, who last week said, quote, "ICE is not going away. We are coming for you." Is this going to get worse, Ondine, before it gets better?
Yes, yes, that's the honest truth. It's going to get worse. Initially they were targeting predominantly men, but what we are starting to see now, they're also targeting women and children. Again, it's about the numbers. They have a certain quota that they need to fill. I think it's 3,000 a day, that immigrants that they want to arrest, and they're not all going to be men. They're going to have to arrest women and children. It is going to get worse, and that's why we need to stand united. We need to continue, shining the spotlight on this illegality that they're engaging in, because that's what it is.
I just want to mention something. One of the cases that we haven't heard too much about, but we really should hear a little bit more. I know New Bedford Light talked a little bit about it, but the individual who's up in New York, upstate New York, who is receiving dialysis treatments 3 times a week. His bond hearing was denied this week on Monday, even though he has a brother who is a legal permanent resident. Please call Senator Markey's office about this, because Congress people do have can intervene on at some level, and please encourage him to look into that case. His name is Marvin Chiktik-Oos. I can write his name, and to please ask for some release on bond for this individual who is has a serious medical condition and lives in New Bedford for a long term, and has brothers who live here to support this individual. Yeah.
So people may not be able to see the chat information, Corinn. So it's Marvin Chikit. How do you spell that?
Chitic.
Chitic, US.
Yes.
And he is one of 2 people that I'm aware of. There was another individual with diabetes that was arrested, but these are people with serious medical problems. We have to wrap up. This hour has flown by. We'll be on the chat again on the next Wednesday with Adrian Ventura and Lisa Maya Knauer from Centro Comunitario. I just, if I could, some folks have called for the seafood houses, the landlords that rent to immigrants, the church community to speak out, the politicians. Not all of them have spoken out. Is that something that's important to Alicia?
Yes, yes. We've been asking the churches to come out. It is part of faith. Action is part of faith. It is part of faith. And we have been asking them to come out and talk. They also have community members that trust them, that believe in them. They need to come out and also speak about injustice, speak about what is being done, and it's wrong. This is wrong. And they're not speaking about it. Even we have here, we've been having incidents with children and with everything else. And even our mayor didn't even come out and talked on our press conference that we had in front of the city hall. Even then, he didn't even come. So they're not being present in our situation. They're ignoring our situation. And as I'm a citizen, I told them that I also vote for them. And well, I haven't, but I have a choice. And I would encourage people not to vote for them if they continue not responding the way they're supposed to respond. They are here to serve a community, and they're not serving their community. They are paying their taxes and are also paying their salary, and they need to come out and do their work, because they are terrorizing their community and they're not acting as what they're supposed to be acting, as serving the community, because that's why they're there and they were elected to.
Now, I heard just today that the mayor has claimed that he has made pointed remarks in favor of protecting the immigrants. I think he has spoken out in terms of saying they're not getting good information from ICE. But as I pointed out in my column, I think the way that people's rights are being abused really calls for much more, and not just from the mayor, but the city council, the state legislative delegation, and the business and church community in the city. That's my opinion. So before we wrap up, final words, Ondine, do you have final thoughts you'd like to leave with us?
I think just continue to support the immigrant community in New Bedford. I'm not a native here, but I've been part of, fighting for this community since even long before the Michael Bianco raid. And I love this community, and I'm going to continue to fight for them. And I just encourage everyone who's listening, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, we need your help, we need your support.
You certainly have walked the walk for New Bedford, Ondine. Corinn, final words?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that there's lots of ways that people can get involved to do their part in a lot of different ways, because there's all sorts of organizations that are supporting immigrants, but supporting the broader movement to address some of the abuses of power that are going on today in our country.
Final words, Alicia?
Call of unity and respect, and we've been calling for people to unite themselves. We've been separated too long, and it's we shouldn't be doing, we shouldn't be separated by colors or ethnicity. We need to be united so we can be strong. This is New Bedford. It's beautiful because it's rich in culture. So let's continue doing that, and let's love each other, because that's what we're here for in this world.
Well, thank you all for joining me. This has been Jack Spillane for the chat. New Bedford is an immigrant city. This is the issue of our time. Let's do something about it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.